Yeah, I want to talk about based Florida man Ron DeSantis. My boy Ron. Really liking DeSantis, actually. I didn't really know who he was until fairly recently, in like the last year or so. But he's been really impressing people. He's been really impressing me. So I thought I'd go and have a look at his Wikipedia article, because where else are you going to start? And I was really quite surprised about how firm he was on a certain set of policy positions. Now, in many ways, he seems to be a really... Excuse me. What's going on in my throat today? In many ways, he is a pretty predictable Republican governor. In fact, most areas. He's not like, obsessive about weed, but he opposes it recreationally. He opposes abortion and Planned Parenthood. He's pretty based on Congress, saying if they don't pass budgets, they shouldn't get paid. He's been named a taxpayer superhero by the conservative think tank Citizens Against Government Waste. He generally seems to want to lower taxes. He opposes increased federalization, prefers localism, opted out of his own congressional pension, and then attempted to eliminate pensions for congressmen. Was pretty great.
Yeah, this guy sounds awesome.
Yeah, I know, right? And the way he said it as well, right? He was like, after introducing the End Pensions in Congress Act, DeSantis said the founding fathers envisaged elected officials as part of a servant class, yet Washington has evolved into a ruling class culture. Good point. Great framing. A+ rating on gun control from the NRA, which means no gun control. And he also proposed an anti-mob extension to the pre-existing stand your ground law in Florida that would allow gun-owning residents to use deadly force on individuals they believe are looting. Not necessarily your stuff. Just you're looting, are you? After the 2018 Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in Parkland, Florida, DeSantis expressed his support for hiring retired law enforcement and military veterans as armed guards for schools. He would, in 2021, he obviously signed his executive order prohibiting vaccine passports in Florida and asked the legislature to pass that an identical statute. He opposes mass immigration, sanctuary cities, called in 2015 after the Paris attacks, he called for urgent recognition that Islamic extremism is to blame for the Paris attacks and should be seen as an enemy of America. The enemy is an ideology rooted in militant Islam. And the prudent policy, of course, when talking about refugees, is to err on the side of protecting the American people. Yeah. Who is this absolute legend?
I mean, everything there, correct. I mean, yeah. I can't go over how that's a contentious point, though. The idea that Islamism is an enemy of America. Yeah. I mean, like, why are you in Afghanistan, then, if it's not?
I mean, they do just openly say it. If that's not enough, what is?
I mean, chanting death to America, I'm not sure about this. Well, that is the position of the Democrats.
I don't want to stigmatize the Muslims. Well, hang on, why do they represent all Muslims? Why are you taking them as the representative of Muslims in America? But anyway, he also has a 0 rating from the Human Rights Campaign for his voting record on LGBT-related issues.
Does he put that in his campaign literature?
I presume he does. But the thing is, with regards to this, he just seems to be like a modern Republican, because he just said in 2018, he said, look, I don't want any discrimination in Florida. I want people to be able to live their lives, whether you're gay or whether you're religious. Don't care. Right. So it's more about him opposing the lobby group that is the LGBT rights lobby group. It seems he was obviously opposed to the Russiagate conspiracy investigation, very much pro veteran. And the biggest flaw that he has really is that he's a Catholic.
We'll overlook it this time.
Yeah, we'll overlook it this time. I mean, the French are Catholics as well. We've got to overlook that too.
But you say he's a typical modern Republican. He doesn't look like a plant pot with a Republican logo on it.
Well, I should have been more delicate.
He's a much better, more above the grade, let's say.
Well, what I mean is he doesn't seem to be an empty suit. He doesn't seem to be a bought and paid for corporate man. He actually seems to have some convictions that are sort of modern Republican convictions, which are not like, old school Republican convictions. And he seems to be doing a great job. And so, of course, in the light of Black Lives Matter and all of this going on, he decided he's not taking any of their S. He signed a law on April the 20th, or just before, that was a bill that would increasingly punish people who violently riot, loot, and destroy properties, and punish cities that don't protect the lives and properties of those people who attempt to of the cities from the presumably Democrat governors of these cities who try to redirect funds from law enforcement to elsewhere. So all good things totally justifiable, right? But detractors say, as Yahoo News tell us, that the law violates the First Amendment rights to free speech, like you care, communists, and targets black communities, which really seems to be a damning indictment, doesn't it? Like, if no looting law. Well, you're a racist.
disproportionately targets black people.
Does it now?
I mean, I didn't say that, but
yeah, you said that. The mask is suddenly off. But I mean, it's a strange way of admitting that he is right, that there's a moral problem with the behaviour of the people in these communities. He signed a bill that, obviously, it was on the day of the trial of Derek Chauvin, where they were coming to a conclusion, and it just allows him to actually do something about these things. So, increase legal charges for anyone who assaults people, particularly law enforcement, or damages property during a riot. Allow businesses that are damaged or destroyed in lootings or riots to sue the cities that failed to provide law enforcement and protection. Yeah. Why not?
Yeah.
Why the hell
not?
You
pay the taxes.
Exactly. You pay the taxes. The police are supposed to be there to protect your business because of it. And if a mob of people that the left will describe as Black Lives Matter supporters come in and burn the thing down, then someone's responsible for that.
Yeah. I mean, if the Democrat governor, say in like Portland, the Democrat mayor, saying don't intervene, stand back, don't use tear gas.
Minneapolis, we've defunded the police. Well, I'm suing you now because you defunded the police. Why? And then I'm moving, because screw you. But yeah, so it seems that he's making really good decisions, actually sensible decisions. I mean, prohibiting defacing, injuring, or damaging memorial or historic property, including flags and stuff like this. So yeah, they can't just run around the streets burning things down. Good. So he's remarkably good on this sort of stuff. And the way he frames it as well. Some local governments are telling police to stand down while cities burned, while businesses were burned and while people were being harmed. That's a dereliction of duty. He was referring to Portland there, Seattle and Minneapolis, which he's right. Somehow this has become a political punt issue, and I don't know how it's political to say, I'm going to protect law enforcement, we're going to protect people's properties, and there's going to be rules of engagement if you decide to riot. Why is that controversial? This totally normal. Like any sensible person. And the point is as well, again, it's not a partisan issue. It shouldn't be a partisan issue, because surely, people who vote Democrat who want their property protected as well.
I mean, you'd hope so.
Well, why wouldn't they?
But then why are they voting Democrat, I guess?
That is guilty consciences. But I love this, right? So in Florida, they have one lone statewide elected Democrat, which is the agriculture commissioner. And she ridiculed DeSantis, saying that this defies free speech rights. Republicans love to talk about the Constitution, but they're shredding it with bills like this. Silencing speech and blocking the vote is what communist regimes do. HB1 should never have been signed. Shut up, communist. All right, shut up, you communist. You hate free speech, you hate your Constitution, you hate property rights. Everyone knows it. That's why you're a Democrat. Shut up. But anyway, so the most recent thing, of course, the most interesting thing that he's doing recently is in response to the banning of Trump, which, of course, we covered on Lotus.com, which Trump was just removed from Silicon Valley platforms in a day. And it showed that, in fact, this was a monopoly and they can act in a cabal, which they are.
Which they've done previously, but in this instance, it was also for something which he didn't do.
But even worse, I mean, it's one thing the cabal deplatforming just a pundit like Alex Jones, but it's another thing the cabal deplatforming a sitting president at the behest of things like the Washington Post and Michelle Obama. It's not even like, if it was other elected officials, okay, maybe.
But also based on a charge which, as we've seen,
was false.
Which is false.
Yeah. And so DeSantis was not taking this lying down. So this article from The Independent is from a couple of months ago, if I recall correctly. Yeah, from February. And where DeSantis basically proposed this. He was like, look, well, why don't I just put forward a bill that means that Florida, any political candidates for office in a Florida election, if they are banned from social media by Twitter and Facebook and any others, then we're going to fine them $100,000 a day for every day that they're banned until their accounts are restored. It's like, go on. I'm listening. I want to hear more. What?
No, I just think it's cool.
So what began apparently with this is that he just says it used to be that consumers were trusted to make their own decisions about what information to consume, about which leaders to follow, about what news to watch. Now those decisions are increasingly being made by nameless, faceless boards of censors. In Florida, we're going to take aim at those companies and pull back the veil and make sure those guys don't continue to find loopholes and grey areas to live above the law. Under our proposal, if a technology company deplatforms a candidate for elected office during an election, the company will face a daily fine of $100,000 until the candidate's access is restored. Excellent. What's wrong with that?
I think the only thing here is it will end up going before the Supreme Court and they'll shoot it down on the free speech rights of the company because they'll say we have a right to get rid of anyone for any reason we want to.
Maybe.
So on and so forth.
John, what's that clicking, man? maybe eventually, but the point is something has to be done. And something has to push forward.
I mean, this is the method Poland's been going for.
Yeah.
And they've got an easier time there legally, of course.
Yeah.
Because it's Poland.
Yeah. And so the bill has been presented and it has passed through. This is the bill, not very exciting to look at, but it has passed through the Senate and now it's going on to the House. What's very interesting about this, we can go to the next one, John, is that the vote was almost exactly along party lines, which goes to show you who feels that they control Silicon Valley. Why wouldn't the Democrats want to have some legal recourse that prevents their own candidates from being arbitrarily deplatformed by a social media platform or a cabal of social media platforms? Why wouldn't they want that?
Because they know their candidates will never have such treatment.
Exactly. Or at least they think their candidates will never have that treatment, but they do think that their opposition candidates will get that treatment. In fact, they've got lots of examples, and the apex example of the president, the sitting president as well. I can't emphasize this enough. Like, how dare Silicon Valley think that they have the authority to tell the American people, actually, you don't need to hear from the president. You don't need to hear from him. That's our job to decide that. I think it's awful. But anyway, you can see exactly how the Democrats are. And I would defy any Democrat who opposes this measure to explain why. Because the only thing they can do is appeal to the First Amendment, but they hate the First Amendment. So what now? You're pro-banning.
Do a debate with Ron DeSantis. Like, tell me why.
Yeah.
Like, I want to see that.
Yeah, I want you to explain just in real time why that's bad. But someone
please think of poor Google.
I know,
right?
Argument. Like the Democrats once again leaping in the way of the biggest, most tyrannical companies in the world. Yeah. Like, there isn't a bigger censor than Google.
Are they a $1 trillion company these days?
Oh, probably. Probably. But the point is that there is no bigger censor than Google. Like, YouTube and Google, like subsidiaries, they're used by literally billions of people. More people are censored by Google than by China. Right? People have to understand these things are enormous and they have such unbelievable power, and there's very little that it seems that anyone can actually do to rein them in. And
I mean, they play this game in the United States when they get called before Congress and whatnot. Oh no, we care about free speech. We're very interested. Blah blah blah. But I mean, not only do we know it's bull in the Western context, but whenever they go east, they just do it. They don't have any qualms about it.
They don't think about it.
Like Google in Pakistan, completely compliant with the Pakistani censorship laws. Google in China, I mean, they were happy to make a search engine for them until the relationship fell through, and now they're like, oh no, and now we hate China, we swear. So shut up, no one believes you.
Yeah. But yeah, again, listening to the Democrats object to this is embarrassing, though. That's the thing. Because, I mean, the Republicans just make great points. Pointing to the dominance of a handful of tech companies such as Amazon, Facebook, Google. A sponsor of the bill called Ray Rodriguez said big tech is not a free market and the state has a role in regulating such companies. Yes, it does. This is a cabal. This is a monopoly, and therefore this is something that antitrust laws should be applied to, right?
I thought I heard a Democrat saying that.
No, that was a Republican.
Sorry,
right? That was the Republican. The response to this from the Democrat, from Senator Jeff Brands, who was a Republican who joined the Democrats in voting against the bill. He was like, well, this is a bill that you'd see in countries we don't want to talk about. There's some 90 miles south of here, and from some of those a little further south, alluding to Cuba. It's like, what are you talking about? What the hell are you talking about? In Cuba, they force social media companies to not deplatform people, do they? I don't think they do. You dunce.
Castro's like, we must platform the capitalist.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's not going to happen.
You know, I don't think they do. And so it's just like all of the... It's so
the
bizarre.
imperialists have rights too.
Yeah. It's so weird. Like, oh, this is the sort of thing they do in China. No, it's not. They literally just deplatformed feminism in China because it was having an effect on the social structures of the country. So they were just like, no, you're gone. So yeah, it's the arguments against this are just paper thin and appealing to the Republicans, basically. So, but don't you care about their free speech rights? What, their free speech to silence us?
The free speech extremists known as the Soviet Union. It's like, so stupid.
But you notice that, like, how soft it is. Well, this is a bill you'd see in countries we don't want to talk about. Yeah, I know you don't want to talk about it because it make you look ridiculous, because you would never see anything like this in these countries. I mean, do they even have bills in these countries?
We can repackage that statement. Countries you don't want to talk about, like Poland, where there's no terrorist attacks, there's no mass immigration, and also the culture is protected. What's going on there?
Really makes you think. But yeah, so hopefully this goes through. But as you say, of course, it probably will get shut down in the Supreme Court. And if Joe Biden packs it, then it definitely will be. But the point is, it's nice to see someone at least doing something, even if it looks like it's doomed to fail. And DeSantis is so unbelievably based that he has his own Twitter account. Not his personally, it's people whining about Ron DeSantis online. 19,000 followers. Like, a surprising number of people follow this. And it's, if you scroll down, John, you can see, like, it's just people just whining and whining that DeSantis isn't going to cuck. And it's like, okay, there we go.
Look at that face.
Yep. The absolute worst. Yep, that's good. Ron DeSantis, when the communists are calling you the absolute worst, that means you're doing a great job. If you enjoyed this segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full broadcast live every weekday at 1 p.m. UK time on lotuseaters.com.